Hello, everybody. This is part 3 of our talk, and we'll focus in this part 3 on Mahmoud Darwish, the Palestinian poet who was born on the 13th of March 1941 and passed away on the 9th of August 2008. Mahmoud Darwish says, I quote, "There is on this land what makes life worth living. على هذه الأرض ما يستحق الحياة. على هذه الأرض ما يستحق الحياة." And he was the national poet of Palestine, and he was called the poet of the resistance. If we try the same way as what we did with Nagib Mahfouz, try to follow the writing career of Darwish and divide it into phases, I would say that I would divide his career, his writing, into different phases. First, when he was in his 20s, and then starting from 1964, then in 1988 when in his 40s, and then in 2000 in his 50s, then in his 60s, 2002 and 6 and so on. So I would divide it into 4 parts, or let us say 3 parts. His writing in his 20s, his writing in his 40s, and his writing in his 50s and 60s. In his 20s, when he was still young, full of energy, his writing was, or his writing has this tone of defiance and anger. And he used clear and direct language because he was addressing his people. He was addressing all his people, so he had to use direct, simple, clear language, simple diction, lyrical language, like his Identity Card, for example, a poem, and another poem about human being, and a third poem to the reader, and so on. In his 40s, his main topics were being in exile, because he was exiled in his 40s, and so he lost his identities. And he returned to the same tone of anger during the invasion of Lebanon, and also during the first Intifada uprising. And the third thing we notice during that phase in his life, that he was he addressed the human side of his enemy in some of his poems. For example, his poem Beirut, and another poem, The Adam of Two Edens. In his 60s, the final part of his life, he turned mystical. His writing style turned mystical and experimental in terms of language and images. For example, his poem Mural, and also A State of Siege. And he started writing about love, about life, death, about daily life experience in a lyrical tone. He never abandoned the lyrical tone and lyrical rhythm, but this time in natural speech, still lyrical, but in natural speech, like his writing in the Butterflies Effect, with some of them prose poems. He didn't call them prose poems, but still lyrical in their essence. He could not abandon this lyrical element, this beautiful lyrical element in his writing. Now I give you some examples. In his 20s, when he was young, let us read, for example, his Identity Card, بطاقة هوية. He says, look at the words, pay attention to the words I mark in red. Look at the vocabulary, what kind of vocabulary he used at the time. He says, write down, I am an Arab. He stole the groves of my forefathers and the land I used to till. You left me nothing but these rocks, and from them I must wrest a loaf of bread for my 8 children. Write down on the top of the first page, I do not hate people. I steal from no one. However, if I am hungry, I will eat the flesh of my usurper. Beware, beware of my hunger and of my anger. We can see and feel his passion We can feel his anger in the lyrical. This is, even in English, it sounds lyrical. Imagine it's in Arabic. In Arabic, it's so lyrical, so powerful. And look at the words: stole, rocks, eat, usurper, hunger, anger. This kind of language, very simple, very direct, very powerful. It conveys his angry feeling very clearly right away. Another poem about a human being, published in 1964. Actually, also Identity Card was published in 1964, and when it was published, it gained him fame right away in the Arab world. He was famous right away in the Arab world. He was born, as I said, in 1941, so 1964. That means he was 23 years old, and he was so famous right away all over the Arab world. The other poem about a human being. Again, pay attention to the words in red. They fettered his mouth with chains and tied his hands to the rocks of the dead. They said, "You're a murderer." They took his food, his clothes, and his banners, and threw him into the well of the dead. They said, "You're a thief." They threw him out of every port and took away his young beloved. And then they said, "You are a refugee." Look at the word: fettered, chains, rock, dead, murderer, dead, thief, refugee. All these words convey clearly his passion, his powerful feelings, his anger, his frustration, his revolutionary spirit at the time. To the reader, another poem, he says, "The wrath of my hands, the wrath of my mouth, and the blood of my veins is a sap of wrath." Very powerful and full of wrath and anger. In his 40s, when he was exiled all over the world, he wrote in Adam of Two Edens, "We brought you tidings of innocence and daisies, but you have your God and we have ours." Now we notice the shift in the language, in the vocabulary, in the diction. Now, after talking or writing using vocabulary like chains, anger, wrath, hunger, rocks, now he's using innocence, daisies, and now he's addressing his enemy. He's addressing his enemy, saying, "We brought you tidings of innocence and daisies, but you have your God and we have ours." Now he's addressing the human side in his enemies. In Ode to Beirut, he says, "Streets encircle us as we walk among the bombs. Are you used to death?" He's addressing his enemy, okay? "Streets encircle us as we walk among the bombs. Are you used to death? I'm used to life and to endless desire. Do you know the dead? I know the ones in love." Again, he's projecting the dichotomy between life and death. He and his people prefer life, while his enemy prefers death. And we can see from the language used, he's talking to his enemy again. "Are you used to death? I'm used to life." Can you feel the shift in his attitude towards his enemy? It's not only about being angry and willing to eat the flesh of his usurper, but now he's addressing the human side of his enemy. So we can feel that Mahmoud Darwish here is getting mature and addressing the human side of his enemy. And another poem, "We travel like other people." He says, we travel like other people, but we return to nowhere." This is wonderful. Mahmoud Darwish was so excellent, really, in saying words, usual words, like ordinary words used by ordinary people, ordinary expressions, but he ends them with something that shocks you as a reader. Like, "We travel like other people," and look at like other people as other people travel. Look at this, like other people. Again, he's trying to show the reader that they are humans too, like other people, humanizing themselves as victims. But the difference between other people and them Palestinians, that, but we return to nowhere. While you return, you travel and you return to your home in the end. They travel, but they return to nowhere. Perfect. Athens airport, he says, Athens airport changes its people every day, but we have stayed put, waiting for the sea. There is no traveling by air to them. This picture with Edward Said. In his late 50s, now he turned mystical, experimental, and tried to talk about, and we can see clearly his writing changed completely. The language changed, the themes changed. Now he's mystical, experimental. The topics are universal topics, like this poem, Mural, Jidariya. He says, "This is your name," a woman said, and vanished through the winding corridor. "There I see heaven within reach. The wing of a white dove carries me towards another childhood. And I never dreamed that I was dreaming. Everything is real. I knew I was casting myself aside and flew. I shall become what I will in the final sphere. And everything is white. The sea suspended upon a roof of white clouds. Nothingness is white in the white heaven of the absolute. I was and was not. In this eternity's white regions, I am alone. I came before I was due." In this poem, he said that he dreamt of death, of being dead. And look at the language. I see heaven. Now there is no more talking about anger, wrath, all of it. Heaven, a white dove, childhood, white heaven, absolute, I was and was not. Very mystical. The language is mystical, is obscure sometimes. In this eternity. So it's the topic here is not anymore about Palestine, about his national cause, about his land. No, it's a universal. It's about death, what we shall see after death, a topic that can be shared and felt by anybody around the world. In the same poem he says, "There is no age sufficient for me to pull my end to the beginning." We can see this always. This he likes to use this dichotomy and the dichotomy of meanings, like end and beginning. And as for me, now that I am filled with all the possible reasons for departure, I am not mine. I am not mine. I am not mine. Departure here, death, is filled with all the possible reasons for departure from this life. I am not mine. In his 60s, he continued in this, his way of writing, his mode of writing, continued in this mystical, universal, and the rhythm of natural speech in a state of siege, Alet Hisar. He says, "A woman said to the clouds, 'Please, enfold my loved one. My clothes are soaked with his blood. If you shall not be rain, my love, be trees, saturated with fertility, be trees. And if you shall not be trees, my love, be a stone, saturated with humidity, be a stone. And if you shall not be a stone, my love, be a moon, in the loved one's dream, in the loved one's dream, be a moon.' So said a woman to her son in his funeral." Very touching poem. He wrote it state of siege during the siege of the Israeli troops on Jenin camp in 2002. Yeah, 2002. During the siege, the same poem, during the siege, time becomes a space that has hardened in its eternity. During the siege, space becomes a time that's late for its yesterday and tomorrow. It's very clear that his writing style completely changed, and now his writing is full of thoughts, not just feeling, not just passion, not just anger, but reflections, thoughts, mystical ideas, mystical language that we'll have to think when we read him. We'll have to think, but I don't mean mystical that's so obscure. It's not that obscure. It's clear. What he says is still clear, but it has a touch of mysticism in it. In the same poem, we do what prisoners do and what the jobless do. We cultivate hope. And this is what I mean, that Darwish uses what is usual, what is ordinary, using ordinary language. Everybody is using. But he ends it with something shocking, something new, unexpected. Like, we do what prisoners do. Any poet would say that. There's nothing genius about it. And what the jobless do. Again, we cultivate hope. The word hope here is really, this is Darwish. This is what makes him different from any ordinary poets. I name the pebbles wings. I name the birds almond and figs. I name the ribs trees. Gently I pull a branch from the fig tree of my breast. I throw it like a stone to blow up the conqueror's tank. Poem to the land. So we can see the language here changed. Wings, birds, almonds, figs, trees, branch, fig. So, beautiful vocabulary, peaceful vocabulary, but he did not give up his revolutionary spirit. He never gave up his revolutionary spirit, but the resistance, the way of resistance has changed here. Here he's not resisting by just throwing stones and shouting and being angry, but he's using even the birds, almond, and he named birds, almond, and figs. I name ribs, trees. Gently I pull a branch from the fig tree of my breast. I throw it like a stone to blow up the conqueror's tanks. He never gave up his revolutionary spirit, but the way of expressing it changed, the language changed, and now he's full of wisdom. And it's really a pity that he passed away so early, because I think during that time he reached his maturity as a poet. In his 60s, he reached his maturity as a poet, as a real, universal, world-class poet. So it's really a pity that he passed away so young, in his 60s. So Darwish, in his 20s, to sum up what I've just said, he focused on national themes. In his 40s, again, national themes. In his 60s, he turned to talk about universal ideas, about love, about life, about death. And he started even to write some love poems, very touching, very beautiful. The language changed. When in his 20s, there was always very clear tone of the defiance. There is anger. The language is so clear, so simple, so lyrical. In his 40s, when he was in exile, he used the same tone of anger, but he started addressing the human side of his enemy. In his 60s, the final phase of his life, he turned mystical, and his language turned experimental, and he moved from talking only about national themes to talk about universal themes and about love, life, daily experience, and so. But he kept his lyrical tone, and but he delivered it in this natural rhythm of speech. That's the end of part 3 of what I want to say about Darwish. Briefly, of course, Darwish is a great poet, and there are a lot of things that we can say about him. So, Mahfouz Darwish, Naguib Mahfouz and Darwish. To sum up and end our talk, in Cairo Trilogy, he used national theme. And in most of his writing, he talked about national themes, national topics, and gained national fame. And in Children of the Alley, he talked about a universal theme, about the creation, about the history of the world, history of religions. He got Nobel Prize. He gained a universal fame. Actually, Nobel Prize, yes, gave him a world fame, universal fame, but he deserves, I think Nobel Prize deserves Naguib Mahfouz more than Naguib Mahfouz deserves Nobel Prize. Darwish also, he deserves Nobel Prize. He deserved, it's pity that he didn't gain it. He didn't win it. At the beginning, all his themes, national themes, poems of resistance, and so on, he was called the national poet of Palestine. And then he gained, through these national themes, he gained universal fame. Same like Mahfouz, Naguib Mahfouz. From national themes, he gained universal fame. And from the universal themes he addressed, he gained his reputation as a universal poet. So this is what I want to say about these two giants in novel writing and in poetry writing, Naguib Mahfouz and Mahmoud Darwish, and how the writing changed from being national literature to become world literature. And I end my lecture here. I hope it's useful to anybody who's interested in Arabic literature or in world literature in general. And I will talk to you later about a new topic. Until then, stay safe and see you. Bye-bye, everybody.
فكر في واجبك كما تفكر في حقك، واعمل طلبا للإتقان لا طلبا للشهرة والجزاء، ولا تنتظر من الناس أكثر مما يحق للناس أن ينتظروه منك.